In 1983, Metallica stood on the brink of a multi-million-dollar record deal. However, on the same day, their lead guitarist, Dave Mustaine, received a bus ticket home, effectively ending his time with the band. This seemingly abrupt end to his career would, in fact, mark the beginning of something far greater. While Metallica moved forward without him, Mustaine spent the next 4 decades building an empire that defied expectations and left a lasting impact on the music industry. This is the story of how a single bus ticket led to 38 million album sales, a multi-million-dollar wine business, and one of the most expensive revenge stories in metal history. On April 11, 1983, as Dave Mustaine was passed out from another hangover, Metallica's manager, Johnny Zazula, finalized a deal that would forever change heavy metal. Major labels were eager to sign the band, offering millions, but with one condition: Mustaine had to go. What fans never knew was that this wasn't a sudden decision. 3 different labels had made serious offers while Mustaine was still in the lineup. However, behind the scenes, a carefully executed plan was already in motion. Kirk Hammett's plane ticket from San Francisco had been booked weeks in advance, and studio time was already reserved in his name. Mustaine's firing wasn't an impulsive choice, it was a strategic move that had been planned in secret. A confidential memo from March 1983 outlined the reasoning behind the decision. It described Metallica as having exceptional commercial potential but stated that their current guitarist posed an unacceptable business risk. The recommendation was clear: Mustaine needed to be replaced immediately before any deal could move forward. The timing was brutal. Industry reports from that time reveal that thrash metal was on the verge of a massive breakthrough, with labels pouring unprecedented money into the genre. By the time Metallica secured their $2 million contract with Elektra Records, Mustaine was no longer part of the picture. That morning, Mustaine arrived at the studio expecting to record Metallica's debut album. Instead, he was handed a one-way bus ticket back home and lost his $3,750 share of the band's advance. But his financial loss was only the beginning. Internal records show that Zazula had been receiving calls from nervous A&R executives for months. The label saw Mustaine as a liability. In a 2022 interview, after decades of silence, Zazula admitted that Mustaine's behavior had been a deal-breaker. His behavior scared them away, he revealed. It wasn't just the drinking. It was about the business risk. This wasn't just the removal of a band member, it was a calculated business decision, one that would forever alter the course of heavy metal. Dave Mustaine wasn't just losing a band, he was being cut out of what would become one of the most profitable franchises in music history. The bus ticket that took him away cost just $49.95, but the financial opportunities he lost that day would eventually amount to over $250 million. However, this was only the beginning of a story that would take 40 years to fully unfold. When Metallica released Kill 'Em All in 1983, it marked the start of a complex financial saga. Mustaine's songwriting was credited on 4 tracks: The Four Horsemen, Jump in the Fire, Metal Militia, and Phantom Lord. These weren't just songs, they were about to become a financial gold mine. Yet, something was amiss. Early publishing contracts revealed a major oversight: Mustaine's songwriting agreements had never been properly formalized. A former Metallica business manager from that time, speaking anonymously, described the situation as chaotic. His contributions were lost in the disorder surrounding his departure. Songs he co-wrote went without proper credit. The legal team was aware of it, but at that point, who was willing to challenge Metallica? These songs were more than just hits, they became financial powerhouses. Records show they have generated over $1.8 million annually in royalties for 40 years. Meanwhile, Mustaine's earnings from them amounted to mere pennies on the dollar due to disputed writing credits. The irony became evident years later. His early Metallica compositions now brought in more revenue each year than Megadeth's entire catalog. The Four Horsemen alone generated more in streaming royalties than Megadeth's 3 most successful songs combined. As a former Metallica financial advisor once remarked, the songs Mustaine had written remained lucrative assets, continuously generating significant income. By 2023, the financial gap between the 2 bands had become massive. Reports showed Metallica's merchandising revenue exceeding Megadeth's by a factor of 10. What had started as a straightforward firing had evolved into a multi-million-dollar financial divide. However, the greatest financial blow was hidden in Metallica's early management records. Mustaine's dismissal had cost him a share of the band's merchandising rights, which included sales from t-shirts, posters, and other memorabilia. Over 4 decades, these rights had generated more than $100 million. A single missing signature in 1983, or rather the absence of one, had permanently altered the course of heavy metal history. But Mustaine was not willing to let that be the final word in his story. He was about to show the music industry what they had underestimated. In May 1983, security footage from Hollywood Music on Sunset Boulevard captured a telling moment: Mustaine selling his guitar equipment while Metallica secured their first major record label advance. The pawn shop receipt told its own story: $1,800 in exchange for gear worth over $10,000. Rock music's greatest revenge story was beginning at absolute zero. The realities of the music industry became clear in Megadeth's first record deal. In 1984, Combat Records extended an offer that exposed the cost of Mustaine's blacklisting: $18,800 for recording, with no advance or tour support. The label's A&R director later admitted, "We got them cheap because every major record company had blacklisted Dave." His connection to Metallica made him untouchable. Their setback became an opportunity for others. The budget records reveal a stark contrast. "Killing Is My Business, and Business Is Good" was recorded in a makeshift garage studio, with expenses showing $2,000 spent on equipment rentals and $1,500 on beer. At the same time, Metallica was in a professional studio recording Ride the Lightning with a $4 million budget. However, determination has its own value. The sales figures from Combat Records told a surprising story. "Killing Is My Business, and Business Is Good" sold 100,000 copies in its first year, an unprecedented achievement for an independent metal release. This success caught the attention of Capitol Records. By 1986, Capitol was ready to make a move, offering Dave Mustaine a $250,000 deal for 2 albums. Internal memos from the label outlined their reasoning: Mustaine represents a low-risk investment in the thrash metal market. His history with Metallica provides built-in publicity. The industry viewed him as damaged goods, but profitable damaged goods. The contrast was evident. While Megadeth secured a $4 million deal, Metallica was signing with Elektra Records for $2 million. However, the industry had underestimated Mustaine. His first album under Capitol, Peace Sells, but Who's Buying, cost just $80,000 to produce but went on to generate over $2 million in its first year. A Capitol executive later admitted, "We severely underestimated Mustaine's commercial potential. This could have been $1 million deal for Mustaine." This wasn't just about music. It was about rebuilding from financial ruin. Every dollar he earned was reinvested in the band. While Metallica's members were purchasing luxury homes in 1986, Mustaine was still living in a small one-bedroom apartment in Hollywood. His goal wasn't wealth, it was redemption, and he was about to prove exactly what the industry had failed to recognize. Everything changed on July 14, 1992. During a quarterly sales meeting at Capitol Records, Vice President Tom Reynolds rushed into the boardroom holding a fax from MTV. Metallica's Symphony of Destruction had just reached #1. It was an unimaginable milestone. Dave Mustaine had finally broken into the mainstream. Sarah Chin, Capitol's marketing director at the time, vividly recalled the moment the room went silent. "We had always seen Megadeth as a niche metal band. But suddenly, they were outselling most of our pop artists." Everyone who had dismissed Dave was now scrambling to understand how they had overlooked this. The sales figures were staggering. Internal reports showed that Countdown to Extinction sold 128,000 copies in its first week, nearly 3 times the expected amount. Demand was so overwhelming that Capitol had to rush order an additional 200,000 copies. Reynolds later revealed that warehouses had completely run out of stock, with major retailers desperately requesting more. Album sales were only the beginning. The Countdown to Extinction tour demonstrated Megadeth's true market power. Vendor contracts indicated that merchandise sales alone reached $2.3 million during the tour, more than the band had made for merchandise in the past 5 years combined. The band that record labels once saw as a risky investment had become a merchandising powerhouse. And then the breakthrough extended beyond the US, pushing Megadeth onto the global stage. The 1992 to 1993 World Tour earned $13.8 million, all without a single US stadium show. While Metallica dominated American arenas, Megadeth carved out its own path to success. Dave was playing chess while everyone else was playing checkers, recalled former manager Ron Leet. Instead of competing directly, Mustaine saw potential in overlooked markets like Japan and South America, places other metal bands ignored. By targeting these regions, he built an empire where Metallica wasn't. By the time they caught on, Megadeth had already established dominance in those markets. The band's rising success even unsettled Metallica's record label. A memo from Elektra Records at the time warned, Megadeth's mainstream crossover threatens our market share. Recommend immediate strategy adjustment to protect key international territories. Countdown to Extinction would eventually sell 3.2 million copies worldwide, prompting Capitol Records to offer a new $5 million per album contract. The man once seen as a liability, Dave Mustaine, had become the label's most valuable asset. However, success came at a steep cost. Medical reports and insurance records from the time revealed an alarming reality. Mustaine was under immense pressure to maintain his momentum. What no one realized was that he was on the verge of risking everything he had built. His biggest battle wasn't against Metallica, but against himself. In December 1988, Megadeth was filming the Wake Up Dead music video at Hollywood studios with production costs reaching $15,000 per day. But something was wrong. Mustaine struggled to sync his guitar playing with his vocals. As a label representative anxiously watched, he suddenly collapsed on set. What followed remained buried in Capitol Records' confidential files, long-standing struggles with addiction and injuries. A classified memo revealed the label had already poured $400,000 into production, but insurance refused to cover the loss. The reason, a mandatory medical test had detected 7 different substances in Mustaine's system. The video was abandoned. Then came an even bigger setback. A $250,000 contract to open for Iron Maiden's European tour was revoked. Officially, the band cited their bassist's health issues, but internal documents told a different story. Mustaine had failed the required medical evaluation for tour insurance. Rick Stevens, Megadeth's tour manager at the time, was frank about the situation. The money wasn't the real problem. We were bleeding opportunities. Every cancelled show, every scrap video, every missed deadline. The industry was keeping track. Major venues wouldn't book us. Insurance companies were backing away. The financial impact was devastating. Leaked financial records estimated that Megadeth lost around $2.1 million in revenue between 1988 and 1989. Merchandising deals disappeared. MTV pulled their videos from daytime rotation. The empire Mustaine had built was starting to crumble. But an even bigger blow was on the horizon. Capitol Records had prepared a contract termination notice in March 1989, citing the band's failure to meet obligations. Mead was on the verge of losing everything. However, an unexpected ally at the label intervened. Jane Martinez, Capitol's former archivist, later discovered the document in Tom Zutter's files. Scrawled across it in red ink were the words, "Not yet. Dave's too valuable to lose." That decision saved Megadeth's career. But Zutter's support came with strict conditions, daily progress reports from the studio, constant medical supervision, and full accountability. The result was Rust in Peace. Recorded in 1990 while Mustaine was undergoing court-mandated rehab, the album would become a platinum-selling success, but at a heavy personal cost. Mead was now classified as a high-risk act by insurance companies. Their premiums skyrocketed. Every tour, every music video, every recording session became significantly more expensive than for their peers. Despite selling millions of albums, their profit margins shrank. The harsh truth of the music industry was exposed. Sometimes success is more costly than failure. And Mustaine was about to discover just how steep that price could be. Inside a meticulously climate-controlled wine cellar in Dave Mustaine's California estate, thousands of bottles lined the walls, displayed between vintage guitars and platinum records. But this wasn't just a collection. It was the foundation of a reinvention born out of desperation. The timing, however, couldn't have been worse. That year, Megadeth's touring revenue had plummeted. Arena shows were drawing only half-capacity crowds. Meet and greet packages remained unsold. A band that once moved millions in merchandise was now struggling to sell basic t-shirts. Internal reports revealed a staggering 60% decline in revenue compared to the previous decade. Then, an unexpected encounter with a Napa Valley vintner changed everything. While other metal bands pursued energy drink endorsements and festival slots, Mustaine took an entirely different route, one rooted in tradition. He launched House of Mustaine wines without any industry support. Music executives dismissed the idea outright, but then the first batch sold out in just 2 weeks. Michael Chen, the distributor of those initial bottles, recalls the industry's disbelief. Everyone thought Mustaine was out of his mind. A thrash metal-inspired wine label. Yet Mustaine had recognized something essential. His fan base was aging. They were no longer spending money on mosh pit tickets. They were investing in $50 bottles of Cabernet. He saw where the market was shifting and the numbers validated his instincts. In its very first year, House of Mustaine Wines generated $3.2 million. The wine business had astonishingly outperformed Megadeth's entire touring income that year. Dave Mustaine, once solely known as a thrash metal icon, had now become a more successful vintner than a rock star. This success paved the way for further ventures. A signature Gibson guitar line, custom amplifiers, limited edition merchandise that had more in common with luxury boutiques than rock concerts. Each new product strategically targeted an older fan base with disposable income, each carried a premium price tag, and the approach worked. Between 2015 and 2022, Mustaine secured more business patents than any other metal musician. His ventures spanned from coffee beans to cryptocurrency, establishing an empire that extended far beyond music. His net worth surged from $12 million to $18 million in just 3 years. Yet despite his remarkable achievements, something still felt incomplete. Mustaine remained driven, constantly striving for more. Newly surfaced emails revealed his persistent outreach to former bandmates, pitching collaboration ideas, not for financial gain, but for something deeper. Inside the climate-controlled wine cellar of Dave Mustaine's California estate, thousands of bottles were neatly arranged on shelves, surrounded by vintage guitars and platinum records. This was more than just a collection. It represented the beginning of a drastic reinvention. Unfortunately, the timing couldn't have been worse. That year, Megadeth's touring revenue had taken a massive hit. Arena shows were only filling half their capacity and meet and greet packages were going unsold. The band, once known for moving millions of dollars in merchandise, now struggled to sell even basic t-shirts. Internal financial reports showed a 60% decline in revenue compared to the previous decade. Then a serendipitous encounter with a Napa Valley vintner changed everything. While other metal bands pursued energy drink deals and festival slots, Mustaine took a radically different approach. He went back to basics. He launched House of Mustaine Wines with no industry backing. Music executives scoffed at the idea, dismissing it as a joke. But when the first batch of wine sold out in just 2 weeks, they had to take notice. Michael Chen, the distributor of that first batch, recalls the industry's reaction. Everyone thought Mustaine had lost his mind. A thrash metal wine label. Yet Dave understood something others didn't. His fans were maturing. They weren't spending their money on concert tickets anymore. They were buying $50 bottles of Cabernet. He recognized where the money was shifting and the numbers confirmed his hunch. In its first year, House of Mustaine Wines brought in an astonishing $3.2 million. Incredibly, the wine business made more money than Megadeth's entire touring operation that year. Dave Mustaine, the thrash metal legend, had become a more successful vintner than a rock star. This success paved the way for more ventures. He launched a signature line of Gibson guitars, custom amplifiers, and limited edition merchandise that looked more like luxury fashion than rock concert gear. Each product was aimed at an older fan base with disposable income, and each was sold at a premium price. The strategy worked. Between 2015 and 2022, Mustaine registered more business patents than any other metal musician. From coffee beans to cryptocurrency, he was building an empire far beyond music. His net worth skyrocketed from $12 million to $18 million in just 3 years. Yet despite all this success, Mustaine continued to push forward. New emails that have since surfaced show him repeatedly reaching out to former bandmates, pitching collaboration ideas, not for the financial rewards, but for something more. In the climate-controlled wine cellar of Dave Mustaine's California estate, thousands of bottles filled the shelves, nestled between vintage guitars and platinum records. But this wasn't merely a collection. It was the start of a major reinvention. The timing, however, couldn't have been worse. That year Megadeth's touring revenue had hit rock bottom. Arena shows were only half full and meet and greet packages went unsold. The band, once a merchandising powerhouse, now struggled to sell even t-shirts. Internal financial data revealed a 60% drop in revenue from the previous decade. Then a chance meeting with a Napa Valley vintner turned things around. While other metal bands were chasing energy drink deals and festival spots, Mustaine went in a completely different direction, back to traditional roots. He launched House of Mustaine wines without any backing from the industry. Music executives scoffed at the idea. But within 2 weeks the first batch sold out. Michael Chen, who distributed the initial wines, remembers the industry skepticism. Everyone thought Mustaine was insane, a thrash metal wine label. But Mustaine understood something others didn't. His fans were growing older and they weren't spending money on concert tickets anymore. They were buying $50 bottles of Cabernet. He recognized the shift in the market and the numbers confirmed his instincts. House of Mustaine wines brought in a remarkable $3.2 million in its first year, outpacing Megadeth's entire touring revenue that year. Dave Mustaine, once a thrash metal icon, had become a more successful vintner than a rock star. Other ventures followed suit. A signature line of Gibson guitars, custom amplifiers, and limited edition merchandise that looked more at home on Rodeo Drive than at a rock concert. Each launch was targeted at an aging fan base with disposable income and offered premium pricing. The strategy worked. Between 2015 and 2022, Mustaine registered more business patents than any other metal musician. From coffee beans to cryptocurrency, he was building an empire that went far beyond music. His net worth grew from $12 million to $18 million in just 3 years. Despite all of this success, something was still missing. Mustaine continued to push for more. Recently uncovered emails show him reaching out to former bandmates, pitching collaboration ideas, not for the money, but for a deeper connection.